what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
U.S. Health Advisors want you to know your health coverage does not have to be complicated. If you aren't happy with your insurance plan, there are unlimited and comprehensive medical plan options available to you right now. U.S. Health Advisors offers solutions which can't be found anywhere else. They can even offer you the ability to purchase more coverage if and when you need it. U.S. Health Advisors offers fair rates and no surprises. Sounds nice, doesn't it? If you'd like to know more, contact U.S. Health Advisors at 828-554-3032 or by email at daniel.bryant@ushadvisors.com. Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello and welcome to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. My name is Alan Jackson. I am the co-director and co-founder of the Footcandle Film Society and the annual Footcandle Film Festival. With me, as always, Chris Fry, who also shares in that same title with me in both of those two organizations. Co-founder, co-director, Footcandle Film Society and Footcandle Film Festival. Chris, how are you doing?
Doing good.
Glad to have you here with us again, as always. And Footcandle Film is our show where we talk about films, as you can probably ascertain from the title. Today's episode, a little different in that, normally with our discussion show here, we talk about films and kind of a lengthy review of at least one or two films. Then we have some news and we have some other segments we do. However, today it is January 2020. The year 2019 is in the rearview mirror.
Yes.
We are still in that window of time, Chris, where we can squeeze in a best of 2019 show and not get chastised for it. So what we're going to do is go ahead and have our best of 19 show. That's going to be the last portion of the show. Chris and I are going to share our favorite films of 2019, as well as share with you a couple of categories we like to throw in the last few years, our biggest surprise from the year and our biggest disappointment from the year. So we'll be covering all that in the latter portion of the show. We'll also be talking about the Oscar nominations. The nominations came in for it's called the 2020 Oscars, but it's recognizing 2019 films.
Right.
So we're going to go through all the nominations of the main categories for that we're really interested in. And then give our kind of thoughts, predictions, see where things were maybe left off, maybe where the Oscars got it wrong. But before we do all of that, we do have one review. We've got to squeeze in here a 2019 technical release, although really most people haven't had a chance to see it until 2020.
Winner of the Golden Globe.
Winner of the Golden Globe for Best Drama Film. Mm-hmm. So that's the drama. The Globes have it in two categories, comedy musical or drama. This one won Best Film for Best
comedy
Drama.
Musical. Oh.
No, okay. Yeah, not quite. 1917, latest war film from Sam Mendes. We're going to do a review of that film to kick us off. So 1917, Oscar nomination discussion, and then we'll end up the show with our Best of 2019 awards that Chris and I like to give.
The most prestigious award.
I feel so. Receive. And I realize we don't have anything physical to give, but your name will be completely embronzed here on this show and standing the test of time for future generations to hear.
People say it's always just an honor to be nominated, so that's what we're doing. Is we're
giving a lot more.
So they shouldn't care that we're not giving a statue.
I completely agree. A lot more honor coming your way. Hopefully to the lucky films that are going to be named. But before we get into any of that, let's go ahead and start with our first official review of the show, kind of our last 2019 review, I guess, as far as a film technically released in 2019, possibly. Sure. This is the latest from director Sam Mendes, his war film, first World War film. It is 1917.
You have a brother in the 2nd Battalion.
Yes, sir. Is he alive?
And with your help, I'd like to keep it that way. But they're walking into a trap. Your orders are to deliver a message calling off tomorrow morning's attack. If you don't, we will lose 1,600 men. Your brother among them.
Chris, with 1917, we follow the story of two young British soldiers during the First World War as they're given, from you heard from the trailer, an impossible mission. Deliver a message deep in enemy territory that will stop 1,600 men from dying, one of them being one of our main protagonist's brother. It's to keep them from walking into a deadly trap that we're finding out. Of course, this is back in the time where you didn't have easy CB radios or cell phones to be able to call each other and let everybody know. So this is kind of the way we had to do it, is we have to send two people off into the battlefield. A very dangerous mission. Now, Sam Mendes directed this film. He's probably best known for American Beauty many years ago. Road to Perdition he did with Tom Hanks. He did, is it Jarhead? Jarhead he did with Jake Gyllenhaal, another kind of military war film. And he also did Skyfall, what many people consider to be one of the best James Bond films made. 2 or 3 films ago, he did that one. So here we are with 1917. It's hard to talk about this film without talking about the gimmick. And I say the gimmick in quotes because I think it's quite a marvelous technical feat, is that making the film in what's called one shot. Now, the idea is that the film technically doesn't cut, although I do believe I've read and seen that there are at least probably 2 cuts in the film, maybe 3.
Sure.
But still, you're talking at least 20, 30-minute segments at a time, where it is a continuous shot. It's hard to talk about the film without talking about that aspect of it, and I understand that that's going to have its impact on people, how they feel about the film. Let me just ask you, putting aside the whole single shot thing, let's just kind of put that gimmick off to the side for a little bit.
Okay.
Tell me your thoughts about this film as a film, and then I want to kind of circle back to the technical aspects. But talk to me about it. What's your takes on the film, just from an overall total picture, if we really don't try to hone in on this whole one-shot technical feat as much yet?
Okay, so I'll just come off and say I thought the film was okay. That's kind of an overall.
Okay.
The film was okay.
Okay.
And we'll get into the reasons why.
All right.
For me, there just really wasn't a story that I hadn't kind of seen before.
Okay.
This was Saving Private Ryan told through the idea of a video game, where you had big bosses cameos by Colin Firth, Andrew Scott, Mark Strong, Benedict Cumberbatch at different points in the film. And it was like you'd get to a big boss cutscene in a video game and they would talk to you. And then you'd be like, oh, that's an actor I recognize. And then they'd go out and they'd continue walking. That happened. So I just mentioned, I've rattled off 5 names, and that was the order they'd appeared in the film too. So to me, but like with a video game, you can be entertained. Mm-hmm. So I was entertained, but story-wise, I was left a little flat. So
okay, all right, I'm with you, and okay, maybe I might elevate that just a little bit, and I'll say it was okay, a little better. I agree with you on story. It was a little lacking. If you're not thinking about the technical aspect, which we will get to in a moment.
Which
of the
I'd
film.
Find it hard for you not to be thinking about it. I mean, it's just so heavy.
That is part of it, is that there are long stretches of this film where not really anything's happening. You're just walking, and it's building tension. The whole one-shot thing, I think, is what makes some of those scenes work better than they would otherwise. However, you're right. When you're left at the end of the day, it's a tough film to really say that I enjoy, other than I more technically appreciate it. It does have some moments where it just kind of goes with some long shots, but again, you as an audience member are looking at it more from, oh wow, the camera hasn't cut yet. But if you take away that technical aspect, and there's just not a lot there.
No, there's
story-wise is very slight. Acting, I thought, was serviceable. It's a much more of a physical demanding roles than it is a dialogue driven. There's very little dialogue in this film for many, many large swatches of it. I take it from the effect of, if I look at it from a technical mindset, I'm very impressed.
No, agreed.
I think very well done. It left me actually wondering at times how they got the shots they did and how they made it work as well as they did. It was impressive. But if I take away that aspect, like what we're talking about, I do feel like it's lacking in some areas.
And so I said okay, and that's because it weighed on my mind that the things that I was being impressed with was the technical achievement. Yeah, it was a 2-hour film, but to me, honestly, you would think if it's just people walking and talking, I wouldn't be that impressed and wouldn't be that engaged. I was, but it was more from a technical aspect and not from a story, because we've already talked about how it was pretty standard, pretty pedestrian. Before we laud about how awesome it is and kind of go into detail about some of the shots, which I'm sure we will, because that's where we're saying it excels, I do want to mention I felt like a character's demise was a bit telegraphed to me, and I was kind of just waiting for it to happen. I kind of felt like, and maybe not for you, but I felt like I had an idea that something, and sure enough, it did. So I thought that was kind of a little trite, maybe. Also, there were some coincidences in the script, and all movies have coincidences, but when you're focused on something that is going for the one take, this is like real life, you're entrenched with these people, you're walking the trenches, you're walking the long miles, you're doing all these dodging bullets with them, then when you have things that just seem like kind of stupid or coincidental, some coincidences were just too...
There maybe you noticed them a little bit more.
Yeah, they were just too much of a story contrivance. When the story is non-existent and then you have a story contrivance, it makes it pop out that much more. Well, I'll say there was a convenience of cow's milk without giving anything away.
Yes.
And then there was a cherry tree heartstring pull that I will not go into that just so was like, okay, I get it, because the story is so thin, and then you have these like road bump coincidences, and you're like, oh yes, I'm supposed to feel something now because
Yeah.
So that took away a little from me.
And I think the video game analogy you gave is interesting, because I did think about that too, in that, just like a lot of more modern video games that I see, you have long stretches where you're just walking to a place, and maybe something happens along the way, but sometimes you're just walking to the place. And you do encounter characters who give you more information or kind of point you in the right direction. And you're right, the framework was very similar to that. Even from a visual standpoint, even though it's not necessarily the same view you would see in a video game, there are times when the camera is following the people around where you're just like, yeah, this does actually kind of feel like I'm guiding that character in a way. So I can see that. The conveniences and some of the contrivances do stand out more than I think they would in another film, because you're thinking about the single take and the fact that it's a linear path that this person's following. It's a little more, it's a little clearer to you that, that's interesting that this happens to be right along this path, or they happen to be going this direction the right way.
Right.
So it does exaggerate those more. I don't think this has any more conveniences than a typical big Hollywood film does, but we notice it more because of the way the film is structured and shot, I think, from that standpoint. So, I will say, technical or not, I think there are some scenes that were really well done, tense scenes that, had some great action and motion to them that I think sometimes were very surprising and kind of startled you as an audience member. And I thought that was well done. And I will say that the two actors that we followed for the most part, I think played the physical roles really well. I mean, they had a lot to do.
They did.
A lot of heavy lifting to do physically in the film. And I think they were pretty amazing in what they did on that aspect. Didn't have to worry as much about dialogue because there is not as much, but there is some. And I think it's, overall, I thought the acting was good. I thought the acting for the type of film that it was and what they were given to work with, I thought was a really, really good performances. It's just really, I saw that this film was nominated, I think, for a screenplay. And that's where I just kind of said, that's where it kind of loses me, because I just don't see this as a written film. I see this as a truly technical film. Right. And that's where I got my enjoyment
Blocking
from
and
it.
all that kind of stuff, yeah.
So let's talk kind of technically and some things that we feel like really work for the film.
Sure.
I will say for me, there's 2 or 3 sequences I thought that were visually extremely impressive and really worked. Probably my favorite, the nighttime chase through kind of a bombed out city with explosions. No, you did not care for that. I love that scene.
I'll tell you why.
Okay, that's fine.
Continue.
It's something I've noticed that, the cinematographer on this was
Deakins.
Roger Deakins, who that's actually something I remember when he did Skyfall with Sam Mendes. There was a lot of sequences towards the end of the film that were with fire and explosions in the back, and, it's kind of at night. And I think they've kind of got a good match for that. I love the scenes. I thought they were visually really, really exciting and interesting to see. Why didn't they work for you?
Because I'd already seen it in Skyfall.
Okay,
and
so you're
because it was
saying
done by the same two people.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it wasn't shot well. Mm-hmm. I'm not disagreeing. It was beautiful. It was technically well crafted, but because it's a contrivance that I didn't mention, because it was at nightfall, and it's at night. There's some instances where they're burning buildings that are help providing light. Okay, I get that. That's fine, and it's convenient that it's enough for you to see what's going on. Okay, I get that. What I kind of found a little bit of a problem was they were helped by flares at some point, and I'm like, okay, I don't really understand why somebody's just randomly shooting off flares everywhere, other than because we need the light for the film. Yeah. That I understand. But, and then the way the scene works out, I guess you could excuse it that maybe there were some bored enemy soldiers that were just doing this because they had nothing else to do. But I wasn't. I had problems buying it. So that was kind of a contrivance. I was like, oh, well, convenient that someone's randomly shooting off flares so that we can see it. But I don't disagree. It looked amazing. And it was well blocked and well shot. So all that, yes, just within the frame of the movie, it was a little contrived for me. But I do admire the shot.
I mean, I think if you got something that works really good in another film and you want to give it another whirl,
at least
I'm
it's
all
the
for
same team that's doing it.
It was awesome. I thought that sequence, that was my favorite sequence of the film. There's also an underground bunker kind of explosion sequence that, just edited well, or I guess it's not really edited. It was one shot, but blocked well and shot well and just put you right in the thick of it. And it was really impressive as well.
I do like that scene. There's another one that I think I've heard you mention to a coworker when you were discussing the film in passing, but it's an early instance of noticing like, okay, yeah, this is a gimmick, but it's a really cool gimmick and they're doing a really good job of it. The people or the two soldiers, they're having to traverse some terrain and there's like basically a big pit with kind of like a water in the middle of a crater. And they have to skirt around the perimeter of it. Well, the camera, of course, because it's, one take nature, follows them down into the crater, but then they skirt the outside because they're not going to go traipsing through like really deep water. But the camera continues straight and pivots around and follows the rest of the traverse around the perimeter, but it goes straight through the middle. The seamlessness of that was really cool.
Yeah. Well, there was even a scene like in that nighttime bombing shot or chase scene where you see a character go through a window, like a small little half window into a building and goes through it, but the camera almost glides through the wall. And it's still one shot. I know I think I read somewhere they kind of handed off the camera to someone who was on the inside and just carried it through. But the fact that it's still so seamless and smooth and people like us are going to try to figure out or try to look and see how they did the shots. Most of the general public watching this is just going to get caught up in the fact that they feel like they're really following this character, and it's a very, it adds to the realism of the effect.
Sure.
So I realize not everybody's going to be sitting there trying to figure out how did they pass the camera through the wall or how did they do it across the water. The effect is what they were going for, and I thought all that was extremely impressive. I really do.
And I guess it was extremely impressive. What kind of knocked it down a little notch was that I feel like I've seen it before in Birdman, which was a movie that got awards attention a while ago. You were a bigger fan overall of the movie. It wasn't a war movie, but it was, Michael Keaton, struggling actor, and it did this basically faked one take for the entire movie, a lot of steady cam around
corners. The difference there is, I think, with Birdman, it was a stylized faked one take. There was a lot of manipulation in the shots, I think, in Birdman, where, they round a corner and it was pretty obvious it goes to black for a split second. Now, I don't think they tried to ever give off the technical impression in doing behind-the-scenes videos of saying, this is how we pulled off this elaborate one-shot. I think they kind of knew that a lot of it was use of CGI or stage stuff to kind of blend it. This one, I think, there's a lot of behind the scenes footage out there now that the film and studio are putting out to show that, no, this was really like one shot.
To try to get Academy Awards for,
exactly.
You should appreciate us.
There was only one moment where, I knew for a fact that was a cut that was, it was a waterfall scene. And that was the only one that even the people I was with watching the movie are just like, oh, yeah, that kind of kind of pulled me out for just a second because so much of the movie is so real with that transition, even though I feel like there might have been some cuts when they went into some underground bunkers and it goes to black just for a split second. I'm like, well, that's enough to make a cut right there, but the waterfall scene was the only one I'm just like, it felt like it had a little CGI in there or something just to kind of make that transition
And
work.
I think a question that has to be asked is why.
Yeah. Why?
I mentioned Saving Private Ryan. Mm-hmm. That film was not done in all one cut.
Right.
Why?
Why do that?
Yeah, and what does the film gain? It's impressive. A lot of the cinematography is awesome. It's impressive they were able to pull it off. That the camera crew was able to do it. That the director was able to make it happen, and that the actors were able to keep things going and make it work. All that's very impressive. But then it comes back to,
what does it add to the story?
What does it add to the story? And to me, the story being non-existent, I guess that's the one aspect of the quote-unquote story is the fact I can appreciate this technical achievement and how amazing it is that it happened. But at the end of the day, it kind of comes across as being like a thrill ride that I've gone to at Disney World. And after I get off, I talk with my family like, oh, yeah, that was really cool how they did this and this and that. That was really amazing. But then the memory fades and all that you remember is that you rode an amusement park ride. Mm-hmm. And that's what this was for me. Memory's fading already. So
yeah. I will give it props and say that if somebody is if people are asking for recommendations on this film, it's like, look, I think it's worth seeing. I think it's an interesting film to see. I think it's well made, absolutely well made from a technical standpoint. Sure. I do agree with you on the question of, why does the film even exist? I mean, it's not a story we haven't seen before. The one shot, I don't think it adds terribly much to the experience of watching the story unfold.
No, because other films like Saving Private Ryan, Thin Red Line, Jarhead, which you mentioned, they can give you that feeling of being embedded in wartime and all the graphic violence that can sometimes happen. That's all been done. So at this point, I will say though, if people like war movies or you really want a theatrical experience, this is that. It is something that needs to be seen. If you want to see it, please go see it in the theater. Yeah. Because it's going to mean that much more when you can hear the sound and see the detail that's, huge.
I will say sound is the other thing I thought was, watching in the theater experience was pretty impressive. And that, obviously making sure giving you that full immersion that the single shot and the cinematography does, but the sound really added to that as well. So, technically, I think it's extremely well done.
Sure.
I just feel like story-wise, there's not a lot to it. You do end up kind of questioning why they even use this whole technique if it didn't really add a lot to the storytelling process. I think that's kind of it's a muted acceptance on both our ends. I will say the one last thing I was going to mention. I hate that probably the biggest shot in the film is in the trailer.
Yeah.
I kind of waited the whole movie for that shot, and I'm like, oh, there it is. I wish I hadn't seen that in the trailer because it would have been even more impressive to see it the first time when you're watching the film, I feel like.
Yeah, if actually they show one of the cut scenes I mentioned, which is okay because it's one of the very first ones, Colin Firth, they showed, we played the audio for it. If they somehow could have figured out how to do that and then just show some quick other moments and have it be that.
But they play a whole stretch of that final
it's really
run sequence that's probably the most visually impressive shot of the whole film. And you get 20 seconds of it in the trailer just about. It's like, oh, come on.
And the internet is flooded with split screen videos of the scene, what you see in the movie, and then the behind the scenes. Yeah. And it is impressive.
But I would have rather seen it in the movie the first time. I think it would have been so impressive if you landed on that big scene at the end and not know that it was coming.
Agreed.
That would have been impressive. But as soon as I saw him start to run out of the trenches, I'm like, here we go. Here's the shot we've been waiting for. So anyway, 1917, I think we're both saying impressive film, technically very, very worth a watch. Just not a lot to hang on to beyond the technical aspects of the film. That is 1917. It did win the Golden Globes for Best Drama Film and also for Best Director for Sam Mendes. We will be talking about both of those choices as we get to our Oscar nominations, which is coming up next. So, Chris, with this part of the show, we normally, we'll get some news items or try to talk through some things happening in the movie world, but we're going to focus on something very, very timely. We do this every year in that we talk about the Oscar nominations. Yes, we realize there's other award shows that happen, but the Academy Awards is kind of the big daddy of them all. It's the one that we are generally interested to see throughout the year what films end up on these lists. They announced the nominations, and we needed to go ahead and hop on this because the award ceremony comes up pretty quick. It's like really like a 3-week window like that between nomination and the awards, which is very odd. Normally there's more over like a month and a half or so.
Right.
So what we're going to do, we're not going to touch on all the nominations, but Chris and I are going to go through some of the categories we're probably the most interested in seeing and understanding the nominations for them. We'll read the nominations and we'll give some of our take on what they missed or kind of where we think the Academy is going to lead. And I'm also curious, Chris, to hear some of your personal preferences for some of these categories as well.
Sure.
So how about, let me go ahead and, if it's okay, I'll go ahead and start us off here. And I was going to let's start off with the acting nominations if we could. I'll start off with lead actor. So we had 5 nominations in the lead actor category this year. We have Antonio Banderas for Pain and Glory, Leonardo DiCaprio for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Adam Driver for Marriage Story, Joaquin Phoenix for Joker, and Jonathan Pryce for The Two Popes. So, Chris, let me just kind of call out a couple things really quick.
Sure.
On my end, and then I want to hear from you as well. So, right off the bat, I see 3 omissions that 2 of them I thought were kind of interesting, and one, well, I'll say 2 of them were more personal. I kind of would have liked to have seen them in there.
Okay.
No Adam Sandler for Uncut Gems. That was, I really expected that one to kind of squeeze in here at the last minute. Uncut Gems is a film that's gotten a lot of buzz and traction in the last month or so.
Right.
I think the Academy likes to recognize when somebody kind of steps outside of their typical style of film. And obviously Adam Sandler doing this one, it was very, very different for him.
Sure.
So I thought that was a little bit of a shock that he wasn't in there.
I agree. I was kind of surprised at that.
The 2 I was kind of personally hoping for, but I knew they were a little more long shot. Eddie Murphy for Dolomite Is My Name. Would have been great to see him in there. And then I still like Taron Egerton from Rocket Man playing Elton John. Those were 3 it would have been really cool to see in this mix. But I realized you got 5. It's a limited number. But Chris, of the 5, any other thoughts or surprises, or what do you think is going to be the one the Academy picks here?
I'm not surprised I left Eddie Murphy out, but it would have been nice to see him. I was a little surprised at Adam Sandler being left out.
Yeah.
I had no love for Taron Egerton. He's fine. Rocket Man was fine, but with all the blowback of Bohemian Rhapsody fallout, I didn't figure that they would do that 2 years in a row. So that didn't surprise me. The one that I'm a little disappointed, and it could have easily slotted in for Jonathan Pryce and Two Popes, is the fellow who was in both Waves, which I mentioned last week, and Loose, the main actor in that, and I have completely blanked on his name. So, but
always a good sign.
Well, the reason why, maybe while I'm like rambling here now, I can maybe look him up. Yeah. So the reason why is his standout role for me was Loose. I was like, who is this guy? He was amazing, and I really hoped, because that film was really strong with a lot of acting. And then I turn around and I see him in Waves. And I'm like, okay, it wasn't just a fluke. This guy, he's definitely got the goods. What's his name, Alan?
Kelvin Harrison Jr.
Thank you. I knew it was a junior there.
I really liked him in Loose. I have not seen Waves yet. I think the problem there is it's just 2 films that nobody saw.
Sure.
I mean, he's got 2 great performances in a year, and that's awesome. But it's 2 films that very, very few people saw. Probably a lot of the Academy voters didn't even see.
Sure.
So I think that makes it a little tricky for him. Unfortunately, there. So where do you think the Academy is going to go with this one?
So because it's like Golden Globe type thing that often overshadows even my pick, because I'm like, well, that's what they did. I think it's likely that Joaquin Phoenix will get it for Joker. Where would I like for it to go? I'd like for Adam Driver to get it for Marriage Story. Don't think that'll happen.
I'd love it for Adam Driver. But honestly, I got to give it to Joaquin Phoenix. I mean, as much as I'd love Adam Driver to get it, because I do like his role in Marriage Story quite a bit, Joaquin Phoenix, I think, kind of earned it. I mean, it is, say what you will about Joker as a movie, his performance, the way he performed it, the way he put it on screen, it was pretty fascinating. So I think he'll win it. I kind of feel like he deserves to win it, so I'm okay with that one if that's where the Academy goes on that. Sure. I think probably second choice from the Academy would be Leonardo DiCaprio.
Right.
I could see that as I think you'll hear in my predictions. I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood could be the film that overpowers this thing quite a bit. And Leonardo DiCaprio taking it for Best Actor could be one of the pieces of that puzzle.
Yeah, in another week or two, you kind of start to feel or hear the avalanche of buzz, and kind of how things start to roll. And then definitely once the ceremony starts, you kind of get to feel like, okay, this is going to be a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood time.
There's typically one film that kind of is the dominating film.
Steamrolls everything else.
Most of the time. Now, I think last year was a year where we didn't really have that film. It kind of spread out throughout several. But generally speaking, there's normally that one film that just checks all the boxes. And we'll see if that's going to be the case this year. All right, so that's Best Actor. That's our predictions there.
So let's move along to actor in a supporting role. Okay. We have Tom Hanks for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Anthony Hopkins for The Two Popes, Al Pacino for The Irishman, Joe Pesci for The Irishman, and Brad Pitt for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'll go ahead and say that I don't think I really have any snubs that I felt like were in this category, unless you count maybe Robert De Niro from The Irishman also being left out.
Yeah, but I think he would have been a lead actor.
True.
Yeah.
So I think most likely the Academy will probably, give it to Joe Pesci for The Irishman.
That's my prediction,
just because he had kind of stepped away from acting and then he came back because, it's kind of like Martin Scorsese was playing the role of the Godfather, always bring me back in. Kind of did that with Joe Pesci. So I think he'll likely get it. Who would I kind of want to win would be Tom Hanks for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, because I think it was him giving his all, but as a side character. And it was so much star power because obviously, but the way that film handled that, which we reviewed that on the previous podcast, it really made me appreciate Tom Hanks. He's a national treasure.
Yeah, he is.
So that's what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the only one I thought was a little surprising, even though it's not a film I really liked, I still think William Dafoe for The Lighthouse would have been interesting to see.
So leave out one of the Irishman people maybe for that, or one of the Two Popes nomination for Anthony Hopkins.
Well, okay, I'll go be honest.
It's a body of work thing.
The Two Popes is, I think, one of the only two movies on these major lists I haven't seen.
It's and I've gotten to see it. It's good, but it's nothing.
Nothing to write home
about. So.
Well, my prediction is I think the Academy. I'm with you. I think it's going to go to Joe Pesci.
Okay.
I could see Brad Pitt squeaking in
if the avalanche starts.
Only because if the Hollywood avalanche starts up, that could be another win for him.
I don't know if people in Hollywood are willing to give Quentin Tarantino that much buzz of an avalanche.
But it's a movie about Hollywood.
I feel like his ego will explode.
Oh, it will. But he also a little bit of body of work, a little bit of all those other factors involved. I don't know. I'm happy seeing Joe Pesci win. I think of the five, Joe Pesci's probably the one I'd want to see win. Tom Hanks, I gave my thoughts on his performance. I thought it was an adequate performance, but it wasn't the highlight of the film for me. As much as I love that film, and Joe Pesci, I thought really added something to his role. I enjoyed seeing him in The Irishman and liked his performance. So we'll see where it goes, but I think we're both predicting Joe Pesci may be the winner there. All right, so let's then move on to lead actress. We have 5 nominations here again. Cynthia Erivo for Harriet, Scarlett Johansson for Marriage Story, Saoirse Ronan for Little Women, Charlize Theron for Bombshell, and Renee Zellweger for Judy. Several interesting snubs in this category. Lupita Nyong'o for Us.
Oh, man.
That was my biggest disappointment.
Disappointment. See, for Loose, for, the guy there, which... Benjamin, I've already forgotten his name.
Kelvin something Jr.
Junior. I know the junior part. I'm just going to call him Junior. We're close.
Junior.
I'm supporting him. So
Kelvin
I'm
Harrison Jr.
There we go. For him, that was just a disappointment, but it wasn't like a shock. I was shocked that Lupita Nyong'o got left off actress in the leading role.
Well, and I'll tell you the one I think that kind of surprised me.
It's a double role and all this stuff going on.
Well, Charlize Theron as lead actor, I didn't see her role as a lead actress in the film, in Bombshell.
Right.
I thought she was going to, if anything, she would have been a supporting actress. So to see her as lead actress, that's a spot I really think should have gone to Lupita for Us.
Yeah.
Awkwafina, didn't get nominated, which she won Best Actress for Comedy or Musical at the Golden Globes.
So you would think.
It's a little disappointing there. And then Jennifer Lopez is one that a lot of people, well, supporting actress, I guess, is the area for her, really. There was a debate whether she'd be a lead or supporting, but either way, she's not nominated in either of those categories.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people see that as kind of a big surprise as well, because that was one she was
I don't know if other
expected.
critics are biased by this, but for me, there's a lot of buzz out of Toronto with that film. And by the time I got around to seeing it, I was kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
It just felt very lightweight. Didn't have a lot to do with it. So not that J-Lo's performance, because we're close, I can color that, wasn't good. It was, but it just, I don't know, it just wasn't hefty.
Well, I think this one, I mean, Renee Zellweger is going to win this one from the Academy. I would rather see Scarlett Johansson from Marriage Story. I'd even be happy with Saoirse Ronan from Little Women. I have not seen Harriet. So again, I'm not judging it. It's just I haven't seen it.
Sure.
And then Charlize Theron, I thought was a fascinating impersonation. I just don't think it's a Best Actress performance. Maybe supporting actress in the film. That was more of an ensemble film. So, but I think Renee Zellweger is going to win it.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if she didn't.
It would be a kind of a big shock if she didn't win it.
Yeah. But my favorite, or who I'd want to win, would be Scarlett Johansson for Marriage Story.
I think of the five, that's the one I was most impressed with the performance there. So, yeah.
For actress in a supporting role, we have Kathy Bates and Richard Jewell, Laura Dern in Marriage Story, Scarlett Johansson in Jojo Rabbit, Florence Pugh in Little Women, and Margot Robbie in Bombshell. Interesting nominations there. I'm kind of surprised to see Kathy Bates with Richard Jewell. However, I will say it is a very strong performance in the film. And when I was watching it, I was like, wow, she is kind of a standout in this film. She's really good in that supporting role. So I'm kind of, I guess I should say, happy to see her there. Mm-hmm. Surprised to see her there, but happy to see her there. I think they will probably give it to Laura Dern in Marriage Story. I think that may be the one thing that Marriage Story walks away with from the Oscars, maybe. Who would I like to see? Probably, Scarlett Johansson being double nominated in this. And,
it definitely hurts, I think.
I would think with the exception of Margot Robbie, I like her as an actress, but it just wasn't really big on Bombshell. I would say any of the other four, I would kind of be in favor of.
I think here's my prediction. I think Scarlett Johansson is going to win it for Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, okay.
I do. I think she's got a chance of winning that. I don't think she won't win Best Actress, but I do think she could get this. There's a lot of good buzz around her performance in Jojo Rabbit. I watched that film again just the other night, to kind of catch up. And
I need to revisit it.
It's good. She's really good in it. I can see that, or Laura Dern. Those are the two I think the Academy will go with. Me personally, I'm kind of with you. I haven't seen Richard Jewell. I've seen all the others. I'm pretty much fine with everybody except Margot Robbie for this performance. I mean, I really am. And it's not that she was bad in the film. It's just we already talked about this film that her role was, I thought, really unnecessary for the film. Her performance, I don't think, was anything special with it. I would have much rather seen her nominated for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood if she was going to get nominated for anything, and that was kind of surprising.
Even though she didn't have a lot of dialogue, her character had a lot
impactful.
to do.
Yeah,
I agree.
So I think Scarlett Johansson could win this. I think that could be her supporting actress award, but also Laura Dern I think would probably be a safe bet as well. Okay, so that's the 4 acting roles. Let's go into cinematography. Something I'm always kind of interested in seeing where they go with this. The 5 nominees we have are The Irishman, that's cinematographers Rodrigo Prieto, Joker, Lawrence Sher, The Lighthouse, Jaron Blashik, 1917, we just talked about in our review, Roger Deakins, the cinematographer there, and then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Robert Richardson. So my predictions here, I do think Roger Deakins will win for 1917.
It seems like there's no way he couldn't.
I kind of feel like, that's the only film of these 5. Well, outside of The Lighthouse. The Lighthouse is one that has gotten a lot of talk about the look of the film and all that. But 1917's just, people are seeing it. It's a pretty big box office movie.
Too, yeah.
It's Roger Deakins. I think that's it. He's in the bag for that.
These are all, those 5 are really, really strong.
Oh, yeah, they're all good.
All are really, really, really strong.
Yeah. Did you have and personally, I'm okay with 1917 winning. I think it deserves it. So you got thoughts on it?
No, I kind of similar along. My backup if 1917, just because if you're, which is not the category is not Best Picture. The category is cinematography.
Cinematography.
Cinematography. So yeah, cinematography. I think that's what will get it. Probably should get it, and I'm happy with it getting it. But my kind of backup would probably be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, just because overall the movie kind of meant more to me. But that's not the category.
Look, I mean, The Lighthouse also had some very unique, interesting cinematography to it. I think 1917's got this one in the bag. I'd be shocked if it didn't win cinematography at this point. So, all right, so that's cinematography. What about director, Chris?
So for directing, we have Martin Scorsese with The Irishman. We have the guy that nobody likes, and I'm blanking on his name.
Todd Phillips.
Joker. There we go. Todd Phillips for the Joker. We have Sam Mendes for 1917, some guy called Quentin Tarantino for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Bong Joon-ho for Parasite. This, there again, you've got some heavy hitting names in there.
Some big names.
Yeah, and you have a foreign film in Parasite being nominated, which. Good for Parasite.
Good to have the director, Bong Joon-ho, nominated for that. No women directors. No Greta Gerwig.
So no Greta Gerwig. No
Lulu Wang.
Right, for Farewell.
No Noah Baumbach for Marriage Story, which I was disappointed by. But, I get it. All five of these pretty well-directed films, and I think good directorial performances. 4 of the 5 names are ones you kind of expect to see. I will say... Todd Phillips sneaking in there. Probably not anything anybody would have predicted a couple years ago.
No,
but
no.
So what's your thoughts there, Chris? Where's the Academy going to go for this one?
I don't think they'll go Joker. I don't think The Irishman would do it. Martin, but you have the whole body of work, and it is Martin Scorsese, and the film is well reviewed and well liked by one of the 2 hosts on the show. But I don't think they'll do that. Because. I think, who knows? I think it'll probably go 1917.
I think so,
because of cinematography and the whole technical thing.
And the director is the one making it happen on screen. And I think that's an impressive feat. No, I think the Academy, I think 1917 is going to walk away with cinematography and director. Right. That's my prediction. I don't think it'll get beyond that, but I think those are the 2 it's going to win. My second choice would be Quentin Tarantino winning, which again, may be more of a body of work thing, maybe more of a recognition of everything else. I'd love to see Bong Joon-ho take it.
That's who I want to take it.
That would be, to me, that was, outside of the technical aspect of 1917, the best directed from actors and placement and staging and setting of mood and tension and everything. I think Bong Joon-ho did the best job in Parasite with that. So, yeah, it would have been nice to see a Greta Gerwig or Noah Baumbach on this mix because I think their films deserved it. I think both are well directed. But I will say these 5 they've got are really strong directorial efforts for sure. So before we get to Best Picture, Chris, let's hit some of the different category films best of. So we've got Best Animated Feature. And there are 5 nominations here again. How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, I Lost My Body, Klaus,
yeah.
Missing Link, and Toy Story 4.
Okay, Alan, full disclosure, of those, how many have you seen?
I've seen 1. So these next 2 categories, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I haven't seen many of these.
I've seen all but How to Train Your Dragon Hidden World.
Okay, and so you are in the best position to make a prediction on this then?
I think they will likely go with Toy Story 4.
Okay, even though the Golden Globes went with Missing Link.
True. Yeah. I would be happy if they gave it to Missing Link because of body of work for Leica Studios.
And it kind of breaks up the whole Pixar monotony.
The chokehold that they have on that category, seemingly. I liked Missing Link, but I do feel like, and Toy Story has so much backstory with it coming with it that it's kind of hard not to give it to it. And theoretically, it is the final one, supposedly.
Well, yeah, but I almost don't want to give it to that just because I still feel like it was kind of an unnecessary film.
I disagree. Yeah. But 3 was good enough on its own merits. But we said that in the review.
I think it's just kind of all. It's just. Yeah, anyway, we won't rehash that review.
Sure.
But I'll be a little disappointed if Toy Story 4 got it because it's kind of like, all right, like the Toy Story franchise has gotten its best animated film nomination before and won before. It's the fourth one.
See, and I feel like that's why the Golden Globe, it may have gotten the Golden Globe because people have Toy Story fatigue. And I think that may be why
there's a little bit
got
of
it.
that.
I will say a surprise for me, but kind of a nice one in a way. Another animated movie that I've seen is Frozen 2.
Okay.
And it is a Disney film. So Disney does not have, it used to be anything, Disney could just like animate a blue blob on a screen for, 80 minutes, and that would get nominated seemingly for anything Disney puts out animated, it's going to be nominated. Frozen 2 was not nominated at all for Best Animated Film, which surprised me. Something else that kind of surprised me is Claws, which is on there, was a Netflix movie that got in there. So they left off Frozen 2, which, made tons of money. It's but put that on there, which was released. I don't think it was actually released in theaters. I think it may have gone just to Netflix, but I guess maybe it did. I'm not sure. But still, surprising that was on there. I Lost My Body is a subtitled foreign film. So it's the diversity in the animated feature film category kind of surprised me. Well, and the fact that you're leaving Frozen 2, sorry, can't resist, out in the cold.
I think the diversity is great because, I think for a while these animated films, I remember there was actually times where there was only like three
me too.
nominated animated features, and they were all pretty much Disney-like, maybe Sony DreamWorks or something like that. But yeah, you've got all different studios, all different styles of animation. It's pretty cool.
And it's not like, there are 2 sequels in there, Toy Story 4 and the How to Train Your Dragon, but they left out Frozen 2. So it's like they weren't just going with proven juggernaut films. So I thought that was kind of surprising.
I agree. Again, I don't have a dog in the fight on this one since I haven't seen them. So I'll just be happy if anything but Toy Story 4 wins. Well, and I don't need another How to Train Your Dragon film. So let's say I'd be happy if it was one of the other 3, just because I think that really would kind of shake things up a little bit. So, all right. How about the best documentary feature, Chris? What do we got there?
Sure. So in that category, we have American Factory, The Cave, The Edge of Democracy, For Sama, and Honeyland. And of those 5, I have seen 4.
I have seen 0.
It does help. Here again, we're starting this whole role of talking about Netflix. Yeah. Irishman was Netflix. Claws was Netflix. American Factory and Edge of Democracy are both Netflix. Yeah. So, started last year with Roma kind of getting buzz. And what was the documentary? Icarus that won for so that was kind of like Netflix's first hey, look, we won something. So it's interesting that of the 5 nominees, they have 2. Who will win? I have no idea. It's also interesting. For Sama and The Cave are both have to do with Syria and the war going on there right now. So that could.
So 2 films about Syria, but 0 about the Apollo 11 space flight.
True.
So no Apollo 11, which really, really disappointed me.
And no Amazing Grace either, which is kind of interesting.
That one, I get it was a good documentary, but would it elevate to top 5? I don't know. Apollo 11, though, to me was just a feat. And
sure, I agree.
I'll be mentioning it later in the show, but that and Lupita Nyong'o not getting For Us was probably my 2 biggest shocks reading the nominations when they came out Monday morning. So.
Yeah, I'll agree. I was really surprised because even critics and audience, it was just so high, and then nothing. So I guess who do I think the Academy will pick? I'm gonna lean towards. I think I'm gonna lead towards For Sama.
Okay.
And
sure.
Sounds like
okay.
Sure.
Yeah, whatever.
And I think that these are all pretty strong. It's a strong category.
Yeah.
I'll say that. I hope that one does win.
So good. All right. So before we get to Best Picture, one last one. Best International Feature Film. And I am using the new title of this instead of Foreign Language Film. However, Chris, it brings up a quick question for me. I just thought about honestly this morning in the shower thinking about this.
Okay.
So when you call it Best Foreign Language Film, granted, I realize, like you said, that's an issue. That's a problem because then you run into problems like films that, whether they use foreign language or not throughout the film, if they're made in another country, they should be eligible.
For instance, the one that was made in Africa, but they spoke a lot of English in the majority of the film. So
but now, saying Best International Feature Film, the Academy Awards are an American institution. So does that mean any film like in England, like 1917, produced and filmed in England, should technically be an international feature film?
That's an interesting question.
Okay, just kind of throwing it out there. I'm glad they've changed the name of it, but now if you're saying it's not foreign language, then that means English-speaking films that are not made in America are technically international films.
Well, isn't Star Wars made at Pinewood Studios in England?
Yeah, but I could argue that the whole production of it, like a heavy production studio, is in America.
Yeah.
But you got Australia, you got England, you got, places where they're speaking English. It's just, the films are not American, so shouldn't that be international feature film? Anyway, a discussion for another day.
I would like to see because I'm sure the Academy, like they say that, and then somebody brings up the point, they're just like, oh,
great, here we go. Best non-English speaking international feature film.
Like, I imagine the details for this are like, it's like a whole heavy document, white papers on okay, here's the clarification.
From these countries. It has to be from one of these specified countries.
Oh, man.
Okay, anyway, the nominations are Corpus Christi, Honeyland, which was also for a documentary feature. Kind of interesting to have it in both categories.
It is, it was kind of surprising.
Les Miserables, Pain and Glory, which did get nominated for Best Actor as well, and then Parasite, which we've mentioned already before. Notably, no Portrait of a Woman on Fire. That was a very interesting omission.
Yeah, because
that one's gotten all the buzz lately from critics and people loving it the last few months.
And because I hadn't really heard about Corpus Christi, really. No. Les Miserables, I had heard a little about. And
Pain and Glory is Pedro Almodovar.
Right, so you kind of expect it.
Yeah. So, Parasite's going to win this, though, right? It has to.
I think it's going to win it because it did win the Golden Globe. And I hope it does win it.
And it's the only one of the five, that actually made it to the Best Picture field, too.
True.
That we're going to mention
think it's
in a
shoe-in
second.
I
kind of be like, it would be a shock if Parasite didn't win Best International Feature Film at this point.
Right.
Because then what's the argument there? It's like, okay, it's one of the 9 or however many Best Picture nominees, but it's not good enough to say it's Best International Film. It doesn't work. So there's no rhyme or reason for that. Okay, Chris, let's hit the Best Picture then. And talk about this.
Okay, before we close out with that category, I'm just going to mention real quick.
Oh, okay.
Because I think it's kind of interesting. Kind of you mentioned Portrait of a Lady on Fire, interesting admission. I mentioned Frozen 2. Original song, normally not a very contested category. There are songs nominated. We have I Can't Let You Throw Yourself Away from Toy Story 4, which is what I think is probably going to win. And I'd be happy with it because it actually centers around the Forky character. It makes sense. Anyways. We have a rehash song by Love Me Again and Rocket Man, Elton John. He wrote it. I think it's one that happens towards the end credits, which kind of would let you know why I don't like it. I'm Standing With You from a film Breakthrough that I did not see, and I don't know many people who did, but it's nominated. In the Unknown from Frozen 2. That is the token nomination for Frozen 2. And Stand Up from Harriet. Yeah. Now, I've read you those songs, and some of which, you're like, what? Okay. I cannot believe that Glasgow, No Place Like Home, in parentheses, from Wild Rose was not nominated. I'm not saying it would have a chance of beating Toy Story 2 or our Toy Story 4 song or a Frozen 2 song, but I cannot believe it was not even nominated, especially considering you're throwing like the Rocket Man song or the Breakthrough song or the song from Harriet. Like, I don't know. It's such a pivotal song.
No, it's a great song, and that was a surprise for me as well. So, as much as I enjoyed Rocket Man, I will give you that song that was nominated from it was not a great song to put up there. So, I would be fine taking that off the list and replacing it with the one from Wild Rose. But that's not our job, unfortunately. So we don't get to do that. All right, let's talk about Best Picture though to wrap this all up. We did have the following nominees for Best Picture. Ford versus Ferrari, or Ford v. Ferrari, I guess you got to technically call it.
Sure.
The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. We already mentioned this earlier with Awkwafina not getting nominated for Best Actress, but The Farewell is probably one film that I was a little surprised didn't make the Best Picture film because it just seemed like it had all the right elements going for it to show up in that field. Ford v Ferrari was a surprise for me to show up in here. I did not think that was going to be one of the top ones. All the others make sense. I mean, I feel like that's probably where the list was going to go anyway. I don't think there was anything shocking in there outside of Ford v Ferrari being there instead of the Farewell. That would be my only thing. If those two were swapped, I think the list is like, yeah, this is kind of what I would expect for the best film of the year.
I would have liked to see us represented in Best Picture. Not that I think it would have won, but after you snub Lupita Nyong'o, it's kind of like a snowball effect where they're just not going to recognize the writing or anything for that category. So
A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood would have been nice to see up there as well.
Yeah.
But I get it. I mean, I get if not as many people saw the film, or maybe it just didn't resonate with everybody as much.
I think the fact that
would have been nice.
A lot of people probably had the notion that you and I did before seeing A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, that it would be a lot like the documentary, and so therefore we're like, we've
the documentary
been
was we've already seen that.
Yeah.
So Chris, what is your prediction? Where's the Academy going to go? Not you personally, but where's the Academy going for Best Picture?
It is really tough to say. See, it's one of those things where like you feel the buzz like a week beforehand. You're like, okay, now I know this. We're a little bit still farther out. I feel like it's probably going to be maybe 1917. But I want Parasite to win. But I don't think Parasite will. I think it'll take foreign language, international feature. But 1917,
right.
I guess.
My prediction is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Again, I feel like that's going to be I think that's going to be the film. I think that's the film that everybody's going to talk about afterwards.
Quentin
be like, oh, wow.
Tarantino's speech will be ridiculous.
It will be kind of crazy. I personally would love to see Marriage Story, which is just not going to happen.
Right.
Or Parasite, which there's a snowball's chance it could happen. Snowballs.
Yeah.
1917, I just think is going to win the technical awards, but I don't think it's going to win Best Picture. That's just my prediction.
Who was your call for? But your call was for director, which is technical.
Yeah,
I guess.
Well, I consider director a more closer to more technical aspect.
Sure.
I think if Once Upon a Time in Hollywood does not get it from the Academy, I think you could see a real shock with, it wouldn't be a shock. Joker could win it. Which,
man,
I don't want to be on Twitter the day after or that night after that happens, because there will be some very unhappy people. But Joker could win it. And then you could also throw a curveball and get The Irishman winning it, just because even if it doesn't win a lot in the other categories, I think they look at it more as a complete picture. The Best Picture to me has always been one where they take it's a complete collection of elements. Mm-hmm. There's not one aspect of a film that's great. So 1917, that's where I think it falls out of the category. Because once you remove the technical aspect, there's not a lot there to make it a Best Picture. Mm-hmm. Parasite to me is a complete movie.
Oh, man.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I'd say is a complete movie. Marriage Story, I get it. It's technically not the most impressive film. It is an acting film, and that's pretty much it. Right. So there's a lot of factors. Little Women, I think, it's tough for literary adaptations and remakes and all to win. Jojo Rabbit just didn't. As much as I love the film, I just think a lot of people in the audience and maybe some voters don't feel comfortable voting for a film that kind of has fun with Nazis at times. That's just going to not work for everybody. And then Ford v Ferrari has all the right elements to be Best Picture. It's just not a super great film. It's a good film. It's an adequate film, but it just doesn't have anything propelling it to that higher level. So I think it's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Joker could be a winner, and then Irishman would be a long shot. That's kind of my three predictions.
I think the only thing that saves Joker was nominated for directing, so then it makes you think it could sneak in with Best Picture.
I'm just saying, stranger things have happened,
True.
But I would like either Marriage Story or Parasite to win. Yeah. So that is the Oscar nominations for 2019 films for the 2020 ceremony. I feel like other than the snubs we mentioned or surprises, minus 1, 2, maybe 3 big surprises, I thought overall it was a pretty fair list of nominations. I mean, there's not anything on here that I'm just like outraged about or anything. I think even in the Best Picture category, there's not a Green Book. There's not a film that I look at and say, oh, please don't let this film win. Ford v Ferrari might be the furthest out there to say, wow, if that wins, that would just be a big letdown. But I enjoyed the film. I had a good time with it. I just don't think it's Best Picture category.
Sure.
All the rest of them, if they were to win, it'd be like, interesting. You know, I don't see a lot of outrage. Joker will be the one where there will be dumpsters on fire, like, you know, when you're driving to work in the morning and stuff going crazy from it, just because I think there's a lot of mixed emotions about that film.
Yeah, it was a divisive film. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we will definitely see when the ceremony comes up on February 9th. We'll make sure we kind of recap the big winners in one of our episodes following that ceremony whenever we record next from that. Chris, let's take a really quick break. When we come back, we just got it's our best of segments to end up the show with. It's our best of 2019. This is what people have been waiting for all year. And here it is. We're finally giving it to you, our listeners.
They can't close out the year until we do.
No. We can officially say 2019's done after this next segment. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with Footcandle Films.
This podcast is sponsored by Jackson Creative, a custom communication agency located in downtown Hickory, North Carolina, specializing in online content creation. To learn more, visit thejacksoncreative.com. Jackson Creative, we tell your story.
Welcome back to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. Just a quick reminder before we get to our best of 2019, you are listening to this podcast on the Mesh Network. It is found at themesh.tv, TheMesh.tv, where you can find a lot of original and interesting podcasts to subscribe to. They're all free. They're easy to download. You can use your podcast app of choice, whether it's your iPhone, your Android phone, your computer, your tablet, whatever it may be. There's plenty of ways to listen, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, all those services as well. So if you want to go back and either listen to back episodes, and let's say there's a film that we talked about in the past that you just really caught up with, go back and download the episode where we give a review of it and hear us talk about it. It's a good way to spend a little bit of time. And as always, we'd love to hear your feedback. We'll give you some instructions at the end of the show about how to do that. So with Chris, let's get on to the final big segment of our show, and it is Best of 2019. Now, what we're going to do is each of us have our top 5 films of the year. How about let's kind of alternate 5 upwards.
Okay.
And we'll do that. Then, just so everybody knows, after we do that, we're going to talk about each of us have our biggest disappointment from the year, and then ending up with our biggest surprise. Try to keep those a little. I mean, I don't know if you're going to have overlap between your top 5 and your surprise and disappointment. I don't know. We'll see.
Purposely, I've made it so I do.
They're a clean list and all.
Yes.
I'm the same way. I've tried to put different ones on both lists. So with that, let's go ahead and start with our number 5 film. Chris, why don't you do the honors and start us off?
Sure. We reviewed it here on the show and talked about how surprised we were. But it is not my biggest surprise because I didn't want to have duplicates. But A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Okay. Loved the film that takes a look at Mr. Rogers, but also you consider a journalist who is writing a story about him. What that film was able to do, how it was able to surprise me, the performances, and the innovativeness of using models and some of the things to kind of set up shots. Just awesome. I really liked it. So A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is my number 5.
Okay. Very, very good choice. My number 5, we reviewed it. We brought it as a Footcandle film screening to our community, and we mentioned it earlier in our Oscar nominations, but unfortunately from the category of it did not show up in the Oscar nominations. That was the documentary Apollo 11. I just am still dumbfounded by how they put this thing together. If you would have told me, and actually I remember when we decided to show that film to our film society and we had not seen it yet, I was interested because I've always kind of enjoyed the space program and reading about that. But this idea of just taking a lot of footage that was shot and just stitching it together with no narration, no real, interviews, no headshots, discussion of what's going on, sounded really boring to me. And then when I watched the film, I was really impressed with how they put it together. They made a compelling story out of something that we've all seen. We've all seen the moon landing. We've all know the story. But taking this footage and just this beautiful footage shot at the time really gave it a sense of awe and just understanding the depth of people involved in doing this. I loved it. It's what a documentary to me should do, and I loved it for that reason, which made it even more disappointing that it wasn't in the nomination list. But it's my number 5 of the year.
Oh, man, is it too late to change my biggest surprise? Well, I won't, because I like my biggest surprise. But yeah, that was definitely a surprise of this year, that Apollo 11. I could see it's a great
if
choice.
you described it on paper to me, I've been like,
I'll pass.
I kind of felt the same way a little bit about the Aretha Franklin film. It's like, oh, it's just a concert film of her performing. But again, they did a lot more with it. Apollo 11, I give credit to the editor, to the person who decided how to put this together and make it thrilling.
Sure.
And just a great story they told with it. So, all right. What's your number 4?
So my number 4 is Us, the Jordan Peele's follow-up to Get Out. It features Lupita Nyong'o, who, as we've mentioned, was snubbed for Best Actress. I really liked this film. It was kind of you could see where he was going after Get Out. You could kind of see what he was thinking about, how he's working. He kind of stepped up his game, I felt like, with Us. I can't wait to see what he does next. His next film that he decides to put out. Us was definitely, and I think, unfortunately, this could play into some of the Oscar forgetfulness. It came out in early 2019. So by the time you get to the end of 2019, a lot of people were like,
I think that was a little bit of a challenge for the film too. Yeah. And I think too, it had a little bit of a sophomore expectations to it, where people love Get Out so much. And I think a lot of people went into Us like I did the first time, and I liked it the first time, didn't love it the first time. Mm-hmm. It took me a second viewing, but I've seen the second viewing, and since the second viewing, I love it. It's a great film. So I may be a little bit dealing with that too, as people wanted to go in expecting a certain type of film. They got something they weren't expecting, and they're maybe a little let down by it. So, but no, I think it deserves to be up on the list. I agree.
Well, what's your number 4, Alan?
My number 4 has been mentioned already. The only nomination, it got nominated for Best Picture and got nominated for Best Supporting Actress, and it is Jojo Rabbit.
Okay.
I understand why there's some trepidation about the film. I get it. I actually watched it for a second time just the other night, just mainly to kind of see if I'm looking at it from a viewpoint of are people feeling like the Nazis in this film are too somewhat sympathetic? Do you feel like you're kind of having fun with this idea of Nazi characters? I get it, but I think if you kind of use that criticism, you're looking too much on the surface and not looking deeper at what the film's really saying. It's not a perfect film, but I probably had the most enjoyment and mix of emotions watching this film. It goes places I don't expect. I will say later in the film is probably less interesting to me than the first half of the film. I absolutely adore the first 30, 45 minutes of this film. But the young actor playing the JoJo is great. So good. Scarlett Johansson is probably the best performance I've seen her give outside of maybe Under the Skin. She's just really good. She has a great personality in this film. And then, it's just fun. And Taika Waititi as Hitler. Okay, yeah. Could it have been maybe one scene too many with it? Possibly, but I still liked him when he was on screen. And they did something interesting with him where just when you start to feel like he's being used for comic relief, they turn and you see a much darker side. Sure. And it reminds you about 2/3 of the way through the film. Oh, yeah, I'm supposed to hate these guys. Right. And I remember why now. And I think the film does that. I think if you just go in saying, oh, it's Nazis are funny and all that, I don't like this film because it's insulting, I think you're kind of missing it personally. So Jojo Rabbit's my number 4. I really, really appreciate that film.
It's one I need to revisit. I liked it, but it didn't make my top 5. And I think if I revisit it, it might sneak on there. But
yeah, I'm really curious to see what Taika does next.
Sure.
Because I really enjoyed Hunt for the Wilder People. Of course, I enjoyed what they do in the shadows. Really like this one a lot. I think his films have actually gotten better, each ones I've seen.
I think Love and Thunder is his next one.
The Thor movie.
Yeah,
which, Thor Ragnarok, I liked. I thought I
liked it better than you did.
You did. I thought it. I was wanting more out of it, but it was fine. It was good. It was a better than normal average Marvel film, so I'm happy with that.
Sure.
All right, number 3, Chris. What do you got?
Number 3 is Loose for me.
Wow,
I really like that. Yeah,
Loose making a strong performance in Chris's end of the year here.
I mean, you've got Naomi Watts, you've got Tim Roth, you've got Kelvin Harrison Jr.
Got it.
Yes.
You finally have memorized it. It should never leave your brain now.
And Octavia Spencer. Mm-hmm. All are giving really good performances. It's very, timely subject matter about race and identity, peer pressure, family pressure, academic pressure, just all these elements just really combine to make a really good film. It's tense. It is, some people I could see would say it's a one-timer for them. It actually, I've only seen it once, but that's just because I've had all these films to catch up with the end of the year. I look forward to watching it again. I really like it, and not enough people have seen it, I feel like.
Agreed.
So it's my number 3.
Okay, good call. Good call. All right, so my number 3, you've already mentioned it, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.
Okay.
What can I say? You summed it up pretty well, all the elements of it. I went in very surprised, liking it a lot more. It probably would be one of my bigger surprises if I didn't have it up on this list.
Okay.
And I loved it for the fact that, that it wasn't really about Mr. Rogers or Fred Rogers specifically as much. It was just a great human film where I just felt like these were real people. I get what they're going through. I think it told a great story around them. Matthew Rhys, I thought, was really great in the lead performance role. Kind of a shame he didn't get nominated, but it was a tough field. I get it. But he was so good. So I really liked A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And I think the creative use of the models and transitions and even the opening of the film, which kind of caught me off guard in a good way. It was great. It was just emotional too. My sons and wife had to watch me bawl like a baby halfway through that film. So, it's got that going for it too.
Sure.
So, Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, I think you and I both have on our list here. So, all right. You're up to number 2?
Sure. Number 1, I'm thinking we're probably going to hit into some ditto territory here, but we'll see. Speaking of bawling like a baby, I don't think I bawled like a baby, but I definitely got dusty in the theater. Marriage Story. That's going to be my number 2. The performances we've already talked about on our review. We already mentioned some of them in the Oscar talk. It's well deserved. Despite the fact, this is kind of like an update to Kramer versus Kramer. And it's called Marriage Story, but obviously it's about divorce. But knowing all that, so it's not like you're just doing this completely new subject matter or something, but just the way it was handled, the writing and the acting, make it rise above what would just be just another divorce movie. Mm-hmm. Marriage Story, I think, was pretty good. It was also kind of a surprise for me because I was surprised it was as good as it was. But with the actors and the director involved, I figured it would be good, but not as good. So that's my number 2, Marriage Story.
All right. Just because it's going to be awkward doing this because we are flip-flopping on stuff, I'm going to go ahead and comment on Marriage Story, but it's my number 1.
Okay.
So just because I know where your number 1 is and which is my number 2. So anyway, Marriage Story. Yeah, it's my number 1 film of the year. I loved it. I adore this film. I've seen it 3 times now.
Okay.
I think it's an acting powerhouse. I think it's the way it's told where, I know some people are criticizing, saying that it's maybe told a little bit too much in favor of the male figure versus the female. And I think it depends on which time you look at it.
Sure.
I mean, I've seen it 3 times, and each time I've come away with a different impression of. Okay. The film's not meant to be a who's at fault movie. It's to show that, look, these are 2 people who loved each other, and it just didn't work. And there are reasons why, and you can try to pick sides all you want. But the film, I think, is better off when you don't pick sides and you just look at it as, unfortunately, a situation you go through. What can you make of it? How can you do the best you can with it? And I love the way it ended. I think it's just a perfect ending. I think it's a perfect opening. I think it's a perfect ending to the film. I mean, everything in between is good too. But if you can catch me in the first 10, 15 minutes with a great opening of the film,
sure,
with the montage of what they like about each other, and then the ending, I thought is just a perfect, nice little ending. I'm like, yeah, everything in the middle is great, but you get me at the beginning and end, you got me locked in. So Marriage Story is my number 1 movie of the year. Chris, I know what your number 1 film is, and it's my number 2. So you go ahead and talk about it. So
okay. You're guessing. So you probably didn't know that Cats was going to.
You wrecked my whole list. So no,
it's Parasite, which is it's probably a drinking game by now. People listening to this podcast or the review, like from here on out, it's just every time Chris mentions it, take a drink. I just liked so many elements of this film: the acting, the story, the cinematography, the directing, the surprises. A lot of times it's what. The twists in the film that kind of catch me off guard and where things end. And, it's just, it had a great beginning, but it also had a really great, like really stuck the ending at the end.
Yeah.
It made it kind of not in Hollywood when you thought maybe it was going to. I just can't say enough positive about the film. I will say, because you slated it as your number 2 and I had Marriage Story. The thing for me that I will, a lot of times you could just hit random and put any of these 5 movies in almost any of the slots and it'd work. It's a really close neck and neck score. But the originality of Parasite is what gave it the slight bump ahead of Marriage Story. Marriage Story really good, but just the creative ideas behind Parasite really had it in the number 1 spot for me.
Wow. I mean, and I know we just talked about this film like just an episode or 2 ago, so it's kind of still fresh in our minds. But yeah, I love Parasite. I appreciated it the second time even more so than the first time. I think there's a lot to chew on. There's a lot being said. Yeah, you compare it to a Marriage Story. Marriage Story is fairly singular in its intent and focus, and Parasite's got multiple things. It's hats, it's swearing, and things it's juggling at one time.
Right.
I had to really sit down and look because Marriage Story is still kind of off on its own, and for me,
okay.
Parasite is also off on its own for number 2. There's a big gap between Parasite and like the rest of my list.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, I mentioned, would I have changed a couple little details about in the coda sequence? I would have, me personally, that would have made it a perfect shining 5-star and like no reservation film. That's probably what just dropped it just a little bit to say, you know what, the Marriage Story I've got no issue with. There's nothing I can point out to say I just don't think worked in that film. So, but hey, we're talking about 2 really, really good films here.
This is true.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was curious if our top 2 were going to end up similar after the last couple months and some of the screenings we've talked about. So that's great. So let me make sure I've got this. You are Parasite, Marriage Story, Loose, Us, and Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.
Yes.
I am Marriage Story, Parasite, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Jojo Rabbit, and Apollo 11. So you've got Loose and Us as kind of unique ones on your list, and I've got Jojo Rabbit and Apollo 11. So
yeah, both good interesting outliers.
I think it's a good list. I'm going to mention just really quickly, not going to say anything more about them, but just these are other films I had that were kind of in that 4-star more category for me ranking wise. Okay. I felt bad not finding a place in the top 5, but they just didn't fit. Us was on my honorable mention list. The Irishman, I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. Loose was a 4-star one for me. And then one I know you're going to have an issue with, but I don't care. I'm putting it on here. And that's Rocket Man, I think, is up there for me.
Wow.
And then Joker. Say what you will about Joker, and I understand, again, why, kind of like with Jojo Rabbit, I get why people don't like it. I get why it's divisive. But I've got to give it to it. It's a good movie. I think it actually works as a film. So it's up there. It didn't make my top 5, wasn't going to be anywhere close to it, but it squeaked in at like maybe number 10 or so. So anyway, any others you want to call out, or are you good with our list?
No, I'm pretty good with my list.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to stick to the 5 and you're happy with that.
I'm going to stick to my 5, yeah.
So let's do our last little bit here, just because, it's one thing to be the best of the year, and we've listed those, but we also want to recognize films that lived up to or maybe didn't live up to the expectations we had for them. We don't like picking out worst films. So we're not talking about worst films when we say our biggest disappointment. We are saying a film that maybe we had high hopes for, should have been better given the pedigree and the talent involved, and just didn't work. We felt like it was a big disappointment for us. So, Chris, I think I could kind of guess, and you tell me if I'm right, that if I was just to ask you just point blank, what would it be? Probably it's Star Wars Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, and I don't think it's just recency bias of something that I just recently saw that I was... so I guess we're just going to make this our memorial.
You and I both
just
automatically would say that. That was one that, again, I liked it a little better than you did. I think there's at least some elements of value there, but man, to be the last film and to go out the way it did, it just was a big disappointment. So let's set that one aside.
Okay.
And let's talk about our other big disappointment of the year. Chris, what have you got for us?
So I have a film that we reviewed on the show. I think you were a little higher on it than I was. It came out in June, which may be part of the problem. It was Jim Jarmusch's The Dead Don't Die.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a director I admire. The cast was great. You had Tom Waits, Adam Driver, Bill Murray, Steve Buscemi, lots of other cameos in there as well. And it was, a zombie, ostensibly like a zombie comedy movie. A town finds itself being overrun with a zombie horde. And, it was like a schlocky B movie kind of was what he was going for. But it was also just so heavy-handed in the political message that I wasn't really kind of expecting. And it just, it would have been a funny Saturday Night Live skit, but not an hour and 44-minute movie. Mm-hmm. So,
Agreed.
yeah, it was probably my biggest disappointment.
Okay. I'm with you there. That was a disappointment based on what I was hoping to get when I went into it. Mine was very early in the year. I actually forgot that it was a 2019 film, technically, the way it was released. I should not have gotten my hopes up with M. Night Shyamalan. Shyamalan should have taught me years ago not to get my hopes up, that eventually I was going to be disappointed. So it's probably on me going into this with high hopes, but I did go with high hopes to Glass, only because it's a perfect setup. I mean, come on, this guy had all of fandom rising at his touch. It's like, oh, you did this thing with Glass and people liked the movie, or not Glass, Split. That was a big shock. Everybody loved the movie Split more than you thought they would. And they put that little teaser at the end, and everybody's been wanting an Unbreakable sequel for like 20 years. It's like all the elements were coming together. Shyamalan's on the upswing. Everybody's saying he's back. And here we're going to bring all this together and it's going to be great. And I saw the film. I'm like, that just didn't work. The movie has its fans, but I'm just not one of them. I think you flame out with such a dull, kind of uninspiring film that just, I get that Shyamalan was trying to fight expectations and say, instead of doing this big, gigantic movie that brought us together, he made it smaller and seeming almost like more insignificant. And it was a bold decision to do and end it with this very anticlimactic fight and just tease a big confrontation all the movie, and then you don't even get to that location. You do it out in the front yard. It just seemed like it was just a big letdown. I came out of that movie saying, man, that movie could have been something, but instead, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I really don't understand what happened. Very disappointing. And to see a great character, like one of the few Bruce Willis characters that has actually worked for me in the last 20 years, to kind of just be underused and kind of poorly handled at the end. It was a big disappointment. So
I need to, I've only seen it once and I was disappointed, especially some of the end stuff was terrible. Yeah. But I'd like to actually revisit it at some point and see, now that I've let that go, how good the other 80% of the film is. Alan's giving me.
I don't remember anything good out of it. That's the thing. I can't remember any good scenes. I can't remember any moments of like, oh man, that was a really good moment. I got nothing.
Okay.
The opening, if you remember, it's the opening where Bruce Willis's character David Dunn is like tracking down that group of cheerleaders that got kidnapped by the Split character.
Yeah.
That gave me promise. That was like the first 10, 15 minutes. I felt like, okay, this is what I'm in here for. Let's see it. And then it just lost track. The whole rest of the movie takes place in the mental hospital, and then it all ends on the front yard, and it's just, it was just not good. So very disappointing for me. All right, so that's our disappointments.
Yes.
Let's end on a happy note.
Yes.
Because we've talked about our top 5, but there are films that also really surprised us. Mm-hmm. Maybe they weren't the best of the year, but they were a lot better than they probably deserved to be. So with that, Chris, what is your biggest surprise of the year?
My biggest surprise, I think, will surprise you, unless you're going to surprise me and also have it as your biggest surprise, which could be, because I have no idea what you have. And I'm going to say it and then immediately look at your face. So my biggest surprise of the year was Serenity. Yes, and Alan is a little surprised.
All right.
Okay, this is the movie that reminded me of how a bad movie can be so much fun. Matthew McConaughey and company and the WTF nature of the film made for an unforgettable cinematic experience. Granted, I have not seen Cats yet. But that film, I'm not saying it's a good film, but if you want to say what is a biggest surprise, that movie and just everything that happened, and it was like, wait, what? And it was like twists, but just kind of I can't explain it. But if you want kind of a unique cinematic experience, and I had fun. It was a bad movie that I had fun watching, and that was a surprise, because a lot of times with bad movies, I just am irritated on them, irritated at them. But no, that was my biggest surprise. So I think I have surprised Alan, but I want to know, what is your biggest surprise?
So, all right. Well, I've got a little bit of a cheat. So I wanted to give it to Little Women.
Oh.
Because, it's not a movie I was at all looking forward to. Even though Greta Gerwig, I should have known going in that it was going to be good because I did like Lady Bird as well.
Okay.
And the cast is great and everything. So, yeah, I shouldn't have gone in with low expectations. I should have gone in with higher expectations. So I'm not going to make that my biggest surprise.
It was a pretty much surprise that I liked it as much as I did.
It's not my type of movie. Gotcha. I'm saying literary adaptation.
Period adaptations.
That's been done so many times over and stories been told. I wasn't looking forward to it. Sure. But I'll give it a little surprise. Little bit.
Okay.
No, okay. This one's
I can't wait. What is it?
If we want to reach into a film that I had zero expectation going in and actually enjoyed quite a bit, Togo, the Disney film on Disney Plus. Several things you would not have sold me on about this film.
Okay.
It premiered on Disney Plus. Okay, that's fact number one. Two, it's an untold true story set in the winter of 1925, Alaskan tundra, and it's William Dafoe.
Was this one of your recommendations on a recent show? Yeah. Okay.
Willem Dafoe, a Disney movie, a dog sled, a man and his dog. I'm like, okay, yeah. I'm kind of a sucker for those kind of movies, but I would not expect it to be good.
Sure.
And this was actually a pretty good movie. Actually, even cinematography-wise, I was really impressed with how it looked. It's a good-looking film. Willem Dafoe has a few moments where he kind of goes a little on the absurd side with his performance, which I love. It actually made the film kind of elevate a little bit for me. So Togo on Disney Plus, I'm saying, I know it's not one you can watch in a movie theater, but I'd say it was a pretty good movie. It was my biggest surprise because I did not go in with any sort of expectation. I
don't consider that a cheat at all. Okay. I think that's warranted.
But Little Women, I do have to say, was a really nice surprise too. So
Fair enough.
Whew. So 2019 is done, right?
Yes.
We have told the world what the best films of 2019 were. So now it is locked in stone. That's the way it will be remembered for decades to come. We have talked about our disappointments. We talked about our surprises. We did review the film 1917 at the top of the show. And we have, I feel like, successfully predicted all of the Oscar nominations for this year.
Without a doubt.
That's going to be the shame when we come back to our show after the Oscars. It's going to be kind of a boring show because it's going to be like, well, yeah, everything won that we predicted. I'm sure there won't be any changes to what we predict.
Never.
So with that, we are ready to wrap up the show and wrap up the year. This has been Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. Chris, people I'm sure have opinions. They have disagreements or want to confirm their agreement with you on Serenity. They want to talk about Serenity. They want to dissect it with you. How can they go about doing so?
So you can begin that conversation by sending us an email to info@themesh.tv. You can also follow us on Twitter @FootcandleFilm. And then Al and I also have accounts on Letterboxd. You can track what we're seeing and get brief reviews or thoughts about what we've thought about the films. And that's basically a lot of the ways you can get in touch with us. You can also leave us a review or give us a star rating on iTunes, and that will help us reach more listeners, which we always appreciate. And of course, my last duty is to mention the Footcandle Film Festival, which is going to be running September 23rd through the 27th. So, it's early now, but, we always like to mention it because it's a lot of fun. So if you can make plans to attend, we'd love to have you.
That's great. A lot of stuff going on. It's going to be a great 2020. We're excited to dig into a whole new crop of movies that are coming out in the coming months. And, of course, as we lead up to our festival in September. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close out the show. Thanks so much for listening to Footcandle Films, and we'll look forward to talking to you very, very soon.
See you in the ticket line.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.